Welcome to OM Report by Andre Alpa, your interview-focused podcast on topics from online marketing to internet startups.
All right, so today's OM Report is with Mike Blumenthal, the guru of anything local and search. Can you please introduce yourself, Mike?
Sure. My name's Mike Blumenthal.
Okay, so how did you become what you are? I mean, what problems did you have in order to, dig so deep into the topic that you kind of can't get out of it anymore?
So I grew up in retail, and in 2001, we had a family business that had been open for 50 years. In 2001, we closed it due to competitive pressures, and from that I moved into web development. And I early on recognized that the problems of a retail establishment and the problems of a website were much the same. When Google finally brought out Places and Local and merged the two in 2005, I had an epiphany. I was able to throw away 9 Yellow Page books that I needed to market into my area, and I did all my market prospecting through Google, and I realized that everything was going to go that way. This was 2005. In 2006, when blogging was just getting started, I was very embarrassed about the idea of writing about me, but nobody was writing about local, and I couldn't understand why, because it was clear to me local's where it's at. It's all local all the time, right? So I started interacting with Matt McGee and Bill Slawski, and then a little bit with David Min and Will Scott, and started writing about my questions, and collectively we solved or came up with some of those answers. And that's really my history, is that there's a lot of questions about local. How does it work? Why does it work? Who should use it? Who shouldn't? And the questions are almost infinite. So it's been a huge career shift for me, and I didn't get my first local business out of my blog for almost 5 years. I wrote almost every day for 5 years, and then finally somebody called me and said they wanted to hire me, and I thought, whoa,
what do I do now?
Right. So I started a small local SEO consulting practice, and then from there, in partnership with like David Mim and Mary Bowling and Will Scott, we started a local U training seminars, and we just recently rolled out the Local U Forum, where you can get any local question answered by 12 or 15 of the brightest people in local. And I just, for the first time ever, built a software platform around reviews with Don Campbell called Get 5 Stars. So right now I've got 4 jobs: blogging, consulting, Local U, and Get 5 Stars.
You can't take them apart anymore. They're so intertwined. I mean,
well, I'm hoping to take them apart.
You do?
Well, I'm hoping.
So which one do you want to focus on?
Well, I want to. First, I want enough time so I can write more regularly, right? And secondly, I'm hoping that Local U and Get 5 Stars will allow me to spend a little bit less time in the trenches of consulting, right? When you're a single-out person running a business, there's nobody else to give the job to. You have to, you're basically satisfying everybody, and that takes a lot of time. And so I'm hoping to sort of cut back a little bit on the consulting side so I can spend more time doing the things I really love, local.
Right. So I think, it's quite natural that there was this gap, because historically, SEO came more from the enterprise kind of corner of the world, where people were able to spend a couple thousand per month for SEO, and then the local businesses, they're probably willing to afford like a couple hundred per month. So in that range, there was kind of only a limited number of things that you could do, and then with maps that all changed, and suddenly there is meaningful things that you could do, and I think like the area that you're active in is kind of exploding. I mean, the tool that you are building is not the only one. There's it seems that the market is flooded since last year with tools that will manage your reviews and your local entries in the different directories. What do you think of that kind of explosion of tools for the local area, for the local SEO area?
Yeah, it's exciting to see. There's still some big problems that haven't really been adequately solved. For example, in local NAP, we're just seeing some solutions in the United States, Moz Local, Yext, to some extent, and then a new product from Milestone called Naptune.
So at least like 3 others advertised here somewhere or there a little bit.
And yet none of them have quite captured everything that you need to do to clean NAP across the ecosystem, right?
Can you explain NAP a little bit for everybody?
Sure. Google assembles their business listings algorithmically, right? They've assembled them whatever, 100, 120 120 million businesses around the world. They buy a list from the various list providers, they scrape websites, they scrape directories, and then they assemble knowledge graph entities for that local business and put them out in local search. So it's all done algorithmically. NAP is the glue. It's name, address, and phone number. It's the glue that holds this Google cluster together. And since they source their data from so many places, if your NAP is wrong, then you either reduce the strength of your listing at Google, or worse, you end up with multiple listings at Google, or you send consumers to the wrong driving directions at Google, or call the wrong phone number from the front page of Google. So it's very important that you provide a consistent footprint of your business for Google to integrate into their data structure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's quite understandable why Google is kind of using NAP as a fallback to links, because local businesses often don't have too many links. So they have to find some other solution. What could be, you know,
right. How do you determine
exactly
of an entity in the real world?
Exactly. So because I mean, they stated very much for SEO that it doesn't make sense to go for citations or mentions as a proxy for what's, you know, suggested as good.
Right.
But for local businesses, it doesn't make sense because you can't rely on links because there's just too little happening in the local space.
Right. And so they have found a number of proxies for prominence. Obviously, there's a website and there's links to that website, but like you said, there's citations, mentions in news reports, there's reviews, and a new one that I've been exploring in depth is driving directions. Google has a very interesting patent on using driving directions as a proxy for prominence. Interesting thing about driving directions, right? They tell Google not just that a place gets more visits due to driving directions. They tell Google when they get visits, what days of the week they get visits, what hours of the day they get visits. And they tell Google about your personal behavior. Are you willing to travel 5 miles, or are you willing to travel 50 miles? So not only is it a great ranking tool, it's a great personalization tool. And Google has written some white papers suggesting that they can mix and match driving directions with reviews as a prominence factor.
Wow. So you would, wow. So that's quite a resemblance to what some more advanced SEOs that think, you know, basically analyzing traffic as a proxy for relevance for regular SEO. That would be kind of the real world pendant, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow, that's quite amazing.
And so obviously,
so you would think so you would think, like, for a local business, it would make sense to tell their customers, you know, please, when you're coming to me, use, you know, your Google navigation system and type in my address. Would you go that far already, or you think it's something we should keep an eye out for?
I think I would view it from the point of view of how do you best help the customer find you. And what I'm suggesting to my clients right now is that they put with local businesses who depend on traffic, foot traffic, that they put a big call to action on their site right near their phone number, driving directions. And when you put that into a responsive design, that call to action moves right to the top, and it's one of the first things.
That's a really smart move to do.
And you then put analytics tracking on it, so that small business can see how many times people to their website went and searched for driving directions. What better customer could that business hope for than somebody who wants to drive to their door, right? So it's a great conversion goal as well.
So maybe now that Google has invested in Uber, they're going to track how many Uber, you know, drivers were driving towards you.
Everything is a data point for Google.
Right.
Everything is a data point.
I was just wondering, when you think of local businesses, because sometimes there's like more than one business within one, let's say, building, and then when you see driving directions to a certain address, you don't know which one of the businesses it was targeted to, only if you know, like, which, if you have something like the map or something, the NAP also, you know, parallel use to that. It would be like smart, if you say that's like a big thing, that would be smart to move somewhere where a lot of people drive to, like have like a, you know, have a shop in a shopping area that a lot of people commute to.
Well, obviously, location, right? I think that
comes back to the really old factors.
I don't think I would move locations to manipulate Google Maps, but I have on occasion suggested to businesses that were, say, in the suburbs, and they really wanted to be doing business in the city. The reality of Google Local is they may need to open an office in the city. I mean, you know, if they want to really be present in that pack, which is now very, very visual, very dominant in the SERPs, and pushed all of the, the long tail organic has been pushed off the page. On that front page of local search, there's pins for local businesses. There's a few local websites, really local websites, and there's some strong directories, right? Long tail local stuff has been pushed way down in that.
Yeah.
So if you...
Especially the aggregators, I think they've pushed out very aggressively.
Particularly the second and tier guys. People like...
not Yelp, but the rest.
Well, right, Yelp is doing a great job of SEO.
And same with the YP.
Right, some of the YP stuff, but David Mim and Darren did a great study in the United States about which directories were most prominent in which industries and which markets. But what you see in different markets is different directories have done a good job of being in that vertical in that market. So, for example, in many states in the United States, there is reasonable regulation of local businesses. In Texas, there isn't, right? This is a state that puts out every criminal to death, right? So it's Wild West down there still. And
you're fulfilling kind of all cliches now, and you know this will be viewed in Europe, but it's okay.
Well, it's cliches that I think they'll appreciate.
Okay.
Right? Texas is the Wild West. Is that not a?
It
right?
is.
And it's a metaphor that holds true politically, I guess is what I'm saying. And so local businesses are not very regulated down there, right? So, for example, a roofing constructor can move into the market from another market after he ripped off the other market. And since there's no licensing, he could then go into the market and rip somebody off, right? Well, that's a function of lack of government regulation. So into that void, the Better Business Bureau steps, and they become a prominent local directory in that region to service that need of verifying that that business is reputable and decent. And they've done a good job of projecting that value into the SERPs as a high-ranking directory in that local market. But nationally, they don't do such a good job against, say, Yelp, who's doing an incredible job of pushing themselves in right above the pins in a lot of the results.
So I think like two other things come to my mind that I really like to hear your opinion on. I'm sure others will join that. So one is, do local businesses actually really need their own website, or should they probably just have like their own Google Plus local account and just push that straight forward from every direction? That's my one thought. And then the other thought is, probably because it's probably like a mixed answer to it. I think Google bought this service that is specialized on making websites for restaurants. I forgot the name.
Yes,
I'm sure you.
Purchase, yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? Will Google become the website making machine for local businesses, and they shouldn't make their own website anymore, and they should just put it out on Google Plus, and that's it?
So let me deal with the first one, which is, should a small business have a website? Google looks for proxies for prominence, right? And in the case of local, the primary proxy for prominence, what Google calls in their patents the authority page, is a website, right? So you apps to do, and so that's issue one. So to generate an authority document in Google's eyes, it can't be Google Plus. It has to be a website. So that's issue one. Issue two is that the local algorithm has become what I call trimodal. There are basically three ranking criteria that function independently that they bring then into a single ranking scheme. So all local searches are ambiguous. Do you want the business that's the most prominent? Do you want the business that's closest? Do you want the business that has the best web prominence? So there's an ambiguity in a query for Pizza Seattle. Typically, do you want the closest one or the best one? Who knows, right? So Google says we have two ways to determine prominence and one way to determine to proximity, right? So they're gonna, when you see a PAC result, they mix in the first two or three are typically web prominent results, and then 3 through 7 are typically location prominent, i.e. a lot of citations in the news, maybe without good websites, or they're very close, again, because Google doesn't know. So a website is very important to rank in the highest levels of local SERPs these days. So not only is it important as a place for Google to assign authority, as a proxy for the entity that is the business, but it's important because it influences the local algorithm directly. And what was your second question?
The second question was about this website, the service that they purchase, where you can, as a restaurant owner, you can build your own website through that service, and that would, connect that to Google Plus, and it will kind of like seamlessly 100% Google dependent, and probably you can even book or order meals via that.
Right, it was a transaction platform on top of a web development.
Yes, so it was kind of both.
Right, and Google does a lot of, they have money to burn, and they do a lot of testing. They acquire a lot of talent. The people in that organization are apparently very, very good. So Google acquired some really great programmers who had been very successful at developing a product.
It's a Seattle-based company, actually, because we're in Seattle. I saw like a picture that they're based here somewhere.
And so, from a long-term view of Google, you have to understand that they view the world as their oyster, and they view every digital transaction as their goal. And so one can't underestimate what they will do. Whether they will get into building websites, beyond restaurants or with restaurants, we don't know. Certainly, the reason they haven't done it in the past is it put them too much in conflict with the rest of the industry. They're now strong enough they might do it, but there are many other plays, right? And when Google brings a product into the market, it has to scale both worldwide and be profitable at worldwide scale. And they dropped couponing last week. Just cut it after they bought two big couponing companies that had an incredible product. Instead of trying to put it into the local business center or into the new dashboard, which rolled out today, they tried to sell it at scale, and they didn't succeed. Boom, it's gone. So, you never know with them. I mean, they keep trying until they get it right, though. That's one thing. They're fierce competitors. That's the other. And they have a playbook. When they feel existentially challenged, they will do everything to stop that existential challenge.
It's quite a dark opinion for a U.S. person to speak. Usually, the U.S. opinions I get, they're more politically, milder, I would say. That's quite a dark view. That you could come to Europe with that view, or Germany even.
Look, it isn't dark. It's an effort to achieve clarity in the reality of the economic situation in which we exist. We exist in capitalism, and in capitalism, technology companies achieve oligopolies very quickly, and they can lose their oligopoly almost as quickly. I think that neoclassical economics don't explain those behaviors very well, because they can't even explain how monopolies occur, right? And so I look at it more from a Keynesian or perhaps even Marxian perspective. They understand that business either gets big or it dies, right? They build that into their model, and you have to give Google credit for having been a great capitalist, right? I can't call Google evil, though, because Bing would do it just as quickly if they could. They did do it, right? And all the other capitalists ganged up on them and got some sort of antitrust restraints on them. Well, what'll happen to Google is maybe the same thing. But, the European Union, like the Americans, like the Federal Trade Commission, they're not concerned about me and you as consumers. They're concerned about the impact of Google on other big companies. So only when other big companies, really big companies, get together to try to constrain Google in an anti-monopoly situation will they succeed. So that's not grim. It's just this is the world we live in. Yeah. It's a hard, cold world. Capitalism sucks.
Okay.
Well,
clear words.
It doesn't care about people. It cares about one thing: profit, right? And is that the world I would choose to live in? No, but it's the world I live in. Google rolled out My Business today, right?
Oh, okay.
And My Business is a final integration of Google Places with Google Plus in the context of a new small business brand called My Business. So for the first time in a number of years, Google has a forward-facing brand that they can take to a small business and say, if you want to interact with Google, you do it at My Business. So besides it being a brand, it's a portal for all small business-related products. Businesses can go there and enter their basic local business data. They can go there and do their social posts. They can add their photographs, but they can also see their engagement analytics from social, and they can see their regular analytics.
I missed that.
Yeah, it's a very
While listening to sessions on the conference, you missed them.
You were in the wrong session.
Oh my God, so sorry.
Yes, well,
next time I'll note it down. I'll note it down for next time.
So not only is it a a portal, a brand and a portal. It's a platform on which they will now be able to develop new local small business products very quickly
and push it
in a modular way, right, in and out. And they rolled this out simultaneously, desktop, Android, iPhone. Think of the resources that they've put into that to integrate products from Analytics, Plus, Places into a single unified interface.
That's a big move.
With a single push out into the marketplace with a brand and all this stuff. It's a huge move. And so for me, Google has laid down the gauntlet in local. You know, they've spent the last 2.5 years, fixing the mess that they had created in local. Because when local started...
That's what I wanted actually to ask about. I mean, local is full of spam. I think, like, compared to regular SEO, I mean, yes, in the dark sides of the web, there's always, you know, spammy stuff, but I think like the average search result quality within local, at least in Europe, it's terrible. I'm not sure, maybe in the States everything's better because the data is better and it's more structured and more thought through, but there's no, you know, comparable efforts to combing down through the quality in Google Local. Or does it make sense to you, or does it sound like just like a weird perspective from overseas?
It's a superficial perspective.
Okay.
So spam one of the things about spam is it demonstrates that local is here, right? It demonstrates that there's huge economic interest and value from local.
Absolutely.
So it means that local has arrived as a significant marketing
channel.
Google has invested a lot in it, but you know, there are whole new challenges, right? And whole new technologies they need to develop. But they have in place fairly sophisticated spam abatement right from the point of verification through. And there's various filters they put in place. So while a listing may make it into Google Maps, quite frequently spam is buried on page 2 of Google Maps where nobody sees it. Never makes it to the front page of Google. So it's hard to know exactly how much spam there is, but I do know that they've done a good job of making sure that by the time this business entity or this listing makes it through these various filters to get to the front page, usually on the front page, those 7 results are pretty good. Right? Now again, there's spam in Maps, but you got to go looking for it. No user's looking for it. Google views it from a big data perspective. If the user doesn't see it, it doesn't hurt anybody, right? True. You as an SEO, I as a local geek, we go looking for that crap, and it's there, yes. But the question is, what is the end user experience like that sits on their iPhone and says, show me the local restaurant?
There won't be there.
And then it's also, so in restaurants and stuff, it's clean because there's a lot of good user-generated content, there's a lot of good signals. In some verticals, locksmiths, moving companies, there's more spam, and Google has spent a fair bit of resources combating those guys. But you know, these are some of the smartest people in the world. They're up against Google, or some of the smartest people in the world. It's an interesting battle, but I would say that in the worst categories in the United States, on the front 7 listings, that 85 to 90% of them are accurate in the worst categories. And in the better categories, like restaurants, where hotels, they're virtually 100%. There's no spam.
Well, that's great news.
So, you know,
then I get your point for this. You know, for the, let's say, biased perception of the spam and local. I get that.
Yeah, it's there, and it's true, but it's one of the ways that Google deals with it. They just sort of
it's there, but not in the front.
It's not visible,
so it's not important.
So who cares, right? I mean, you know, how many impressions does a business listing on the 2nd or 3rd page of Google Maps get?
It's not important.
Right. It's insignificant, right?
All right. Thanks so much for your time,
sure.
Mike.
Well, thank you.
OM Report and Andre Alpa would like to thank you for your attention. You can get more episodes on www.omreport.com.